Oh my God. Oh my
Miami
God.
County 911.
Oh my, somebody broke into my home. Somebody broke into my home and
Okay.
shot my wife. My wife she's got 2 shots to her head. There's blood everywhere. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my.
Tip City, Ohio. A place that looks exactly like what it is. Quiet streets, modest yards, the kind of town where people wave at neighbors they've known for a decade, where Friday nights mean high school football and Sunday mornings mean church, where life moves at a pace that feels, on the surface, almost deliberately ordinary. February 16, 2026 started the same way it always did here. Frost on the lawns, the low gray light of a Midwest winter morning pressing against the windows. Somewhere across town, school buses were beginning their routes. Coffee was brewing. Children were waking up. And in one house on one quiet street, something had already gone terribly, irreversibly wrong. At some point that morning, a 911 call was made. A man's voice, controlled enough to dial, controlled enough to speak. He reported a break-in. He said his wife had been shot. When police arrived, they found Ashley Flynn, 37 years old, dead inside her own home, 2 gunshot wounds, and at the entry point of the house, signs of forced entry, a door that told a story that someone had clearly wanted told. Hold onto that word for a moment. Forced. Not broken in a panic, not damaged in a struggle, forced in the specific, deliberate way that a scene is prepared. But we'll come back to that. Because before we talk about what that door really meant, you need to know who Ashley Flynn was. Not what happened to her, who she was. Ashley Flynn was a volleyball coach at Tippecanoe Middle School, a substitute teacher, a woman who showed up not just physically but fully in the lives of the young people around her. After her death, her school district would struggle to find words adequate enough. They described her smile, her warmth, the way her presence changed the feeling of a room simply by entering it. She was a mother, 2 daughters, young enough that the world was still mostly wonder to them, young enough that their mother was supposed to be there for most of it. The school plays, the awkward teenage years, the graduations, the ordinary Tuesday evenings that you never think to memorize until they're gone. She was 37 years old. She had a whole life arranged in front of her. And on a gray February morning in a town built on ordinariness, that life was taken from her inside the home where she was supposed to be safe. Now meet her husband. Caleb Flynn, 39 years old, worship pastor, a man whose career was built entirely on the language of faith, of grace, of devotion. He studied pastoral and music ministry at Lee University, a private Christian university in Tennessee. He went on to lead worship at churches, to stand before congregations, to be the voice that guided people into something they believed was sacred. And in 2013, he auditioned for American Idol, Season 12, a young man with a guitar and a story and a dream. He made it onto that stage in front of those judges, in front of millions of viewers at home. And when asked about it later, he credited his wife. He said she encouraged him to go, that she believed in him when the idea still felt impossible. A man lifted up by the woman beside him. That is the image he had carefully, consistently presented to the world. But images are not the same as truth. And the investigation that began the moment police stepped through that front door would begin pulling at the edges of Caleb Flynn's image within hours, not days, hours. Within 82 hours of Ashley's death, Caleb Flynn was in handcuffs. Think about that timeline. Think about what it takes for investigators in less than 4 days to move from a reported break-in to an arrest. That kind of speed doesn't happen when evidence is thin. It happens when the evidence points in one direction so clearly, so consistently, that there is simply nowhere else to look. But we'll get there. For now, stay with the morning. Stay with the frost on the lawns and the school buses and the ordinary Tuesday that February 16th was supposed to be. Stay with those 2 little girls who woke up that morning with a mother and went asleep that night without one. This is a story about deception, about desire, about a man who preached love from a pulpit while quietly building a second life in the dark, and about a woman full of warmth and light and presence who never got to see what came next. The questions this case raises are not simple ones. They will not be resolved in this chapter. Some of them may not be resolved at all, not here, not yet, but they deserve to be asked slowly, carefully, with the weight they actually carry. Because Ashley Flynn deserves at least that much. If this story is already sitting with you like this video, subscribe to The Hidden Verdict and drop a comment below. One question: do you think Caleb acted alone, or was someone else in this story pulling strings? Tell us. We read every one. There is a particular kind of person who is very good at being two things at once. Not because they are careless, not because they are reckless, but because they have spent years, possibly their entire adult lives, understanding how to give people exactly what those people need to see, how to perform warmth, how to perform devotion, how to stand in a room full of people who trust you completely and feel absolutely nothing pulling at your conscience. Caleb Flynn had been practicing that particular skill for a very long time. He grew up inside the language of faith, studied it formally, built a career around it, pastoral ministry, music ministry, the kind of work that doesn't just ask you to believe, it asks you to lead others into belief. To be the steady voice at the front of the room when people are at their most open, their most vulnerable, their most willing to trust. He was good at it. By every visible measure, he was very good at it. He stood at pulpits. He led worship at multiple churches across multiple years. Congregations looked to him. Families welcomed him. Communities built themselves, in part, around the assurance that a man like Caleb Flynn was exactly who he appeared to be. And then there was the other life. The one running parallel to all of it, quietly, consistently, hidden in the spaces between sermons and school pickups and Sunday dinners. Caleb Flynn had been involved with another woman, not briefly, not impulsively. This was not a moment of weakness that spiraled. This was a relationship, sustained, maintained, protected, existing entirely in the shadow of his marriage, his ministry, and his public identity. Two lives perfectly separated until they were. Think about what that requires. Not just the logistics of it, the careful management of time and phones and stories. Think about the psychological architecture of it. The ability to come home to Ashley, to sit across from her at the dinner table, to put those two little girls to bed and carry none of it on your face. To stand before a congregation the next morning and speak about grace and honesty and love and feel no contradiction. That is not a man who lost his way. That is a man who built a second road and walked both of them simultaneously for as long as he could. And now we arrive at the question that this entire case quietly orbits. Because the affair on its own is not the story. Affairs happen. They are devastating and they are wrong and they fracture families, but they do not, by themselves, end in a staged crime scene and 11 criminal charges. Something shifted. At some point, the two lives stopped being manageable. At some point, the weight of maintaining both of them, or the desire to collapse them into one, became something more dangerous than deception. Was it pressure? Was it love, or what he mistook for love? Was it a plan that had been forming quietly for longer than anyone knew? Investigators moved fast. 82 hours. That speed tells us something. It tells us that what they found when they looked beneath the surface of Caleb Flynn's life did not require extensive searching. It was there, waiting. The way things are when a person has been living a lie so thoroughly that the lie has left marks everywhere. He was arrested on February 19th, 3 days after Ashley was found dead in their home. 3 days after that 911 call, that controlled, deliberate 911 call, where a husband reported a break-in and a shooting in a voice steady enough to speak. He pleaded not guilty. Of course he did. Because that is what the performance required. One more stage, one more audience, one more moment of Caleb Flynn presenting the version of himself he needed the world to accept. But here is what the performance could not explain away. 11 charges: aggravated murder, 3 counts of murder, 2 counts of felonious assault, 3 counts of tampering with evidence, 2 misdemeanor counts of intimidating a witness, a bond set at $3.5 million. You do not accumulate 11 charges from a moment of passion. You do not get charged with tampering with evidence 3 separate times because you panicked. You do not face witness intimidation counts because you were acting alone on impulse. 11 charges is a portrait, and the portrait it paints is of calculation, of planning, of a man who thought, who genuinely believed, that he could manage what came after just as smoothly as he had managed everything before. He was wrong. But the question that Chapter 3 forces us to confront, the question that makes this case so much more uncomfortable than a simple story of betrayal, is whether Caleb Flynn was the only one doing the calculating. Because there was someone else in this story. And her role is the part nobody wants to look at directly. This is the part of the story most people rush past, so share this video because this conversation deserves more than a headline. Like it if you're still with us. Subscribe to The Hidden Verdict. And drop a comment below, did his faith make this worse, or does it even matter to you? Tell us where you stand. There is a version of this story that is very easy to tell. A married man, a secret affair, a wife who didn't know, a husband who decided that the easiest way out of one life was to end the person standing in the middle of it. Clean, brutal, final. That version is comfortable because it has a clear villain and a clear victim, and everything sits where it is supposed to sit. But the truth, or at least, the truth as the evidence suggests it, is not that clean. And the moment you introduce the third person in this story, the moment you really look at her role and what she may or may not have known, the comfortable version starts to crack at the edges. So let's talk about the woman in the middle. We are not going to reduce her to a name or a headline, because this chapter is not about humiliation. It is about something more important than that. It is about the question of complicity, about how much a person can know or suspect or quietly encourage before the line between witness and participant disappears entirely. Caleb Flynn was not a man conducting a casual flirtation. What existed between him and this woman was a sustained relationship, one that had been running alongside his marriage for long enough to become its own kind of commitment. She knew he was married. She knew there were children. She knew that the life he was living with her existed in direct contradiction to the life he was living at home. What she may not have known, or what she may have chosen not to ask about too carefully, is where any of it was going. And that is where the story becomes genuinely uncomfortable. Because when a man is living 2 lives and one of those lives suddenly ends in violence, the question that investigators always ask, the question they have to ask, is who else knew this was coming? Who else had something to gain? Who else might have said, in some moment that now looks very different in hindsight, something that lit the fuse or kept it burning? We do not know with certainty what she knew. What we do know is what the charges say. Caleb Flynn was indicted on 3 separate counts of tampering with evidence and 2 misdemeanor counts of intimidating a witness. A witness. That word matters. In the architecture of a criminal case, witness intimidation does not happen in a vacuum. It happens when someone knows something, when someone could say something, when a version of events exists that the accused needs to remain unspoken. Who was he trying to keep quiet? That question has not been fully answered in public, but it hangs over this chapter like weather. Think about what the timeline looked like from her perspective. A man she had been involved with for an extended period. A man who, by every indication, had given her reason to believe this relationship was real, was meaningful, was going somewhere. And then one February morning, his wife turns up dead and he is on the phone with 911 reporting a break-in. What do you do with that? Do you grieve? Do you panic? Do you call him? Do you say nothing and wait to see what happens next? Do you already know what happened and now you are faced with the specific, suffocating weight of that knowledge? Or, and this is the question the episode title was always building toward, did you already know what was coming before it came? We are not making an accusation here. The evidence as it stands publicly points most heavily at Caleb Flynn. He is the one facing 11 charges. He is the one in Miami County Jail with a $3.5 million bond. He is the one who made that 911 call. But true crime has a long and uncomfortable history of stories where the person holding the gun was not the only person who wanted the trigger pulled, where desire and desperation and quiet conversations in private spaces added up to something that, legally and morally, spreads further than one set of hands. And so we hold the question, we don't release it, we don't answer it prematurely. Because Ashley Flynn deserves a story told honestly, and telling it honestly means acknowledging that we do not yet have the full picture. That somewhere in the space between what Caleb Flynn did and what he may have been encouraged to do, there is a truth that a courtroom will eventually have to reach toward. What we know for certain is this. A woman went to work every day and coached volleyball and smiled at her students and came home to a husband who was living an entirely different life behind her back. A woman who trusted the person who was supposed to be her partner. A woman who, on the morning of February 16th, never got the chance to know how deep that betrayal actually ran. Ashley Flynn did not get to ask her questions. We are asking them for her. We are almost at the part where the evidence stops being circumstantial, so share this video because this story is bigger than a headline. Like it if you're still watching. Subscribe to The Hidden Verdict. And comment below, victim, accomplice, or somewhere in between. Where do you stand on the woman in the middle?
I think it's this one, Colin. No?
Corey?
Okay. I checked this right here, nothing else.
Okay.
My daughters are in the bedroom over there, they're still asleep.
Okay, have you checked on them?
The 911, yes. As of right now, no one else comes in here, period. No, every door. No one.
Okay.
Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Oh my God.
Hey, sit. You want to sit down?
No.
Okay. Take a breath.
Is she gone?
Look at me. Look at me. Take a breath. Okay?
I can't.
Look at me. I need you to breathe, okay?
Try not to touch much. What do I do with my daughters? What do I do with my daughters?
Right now, I need you to breathe, okay? Are these okay?
It's fine.
Okay. Come on, honey.
Any squad you looked at yet? Just walk him, just look at him.
The girls don't know. The girls are
That's what
sleeping.
you just said.
Can I take? I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do.
I don't know what to do either. I'm just I'm in shock. Yeah, I think maybe.
Do you want to sit down on the steps?
If you have a blanket, can you get him a
Yep.
blanket?
Yep.
Till I heard and I froze, and then I ran, and the door to the garage was wide open, and then I.
She's sound asleep. You know. She knew.
She told me to sleep on the couch because I was coughing. I shouldn't have listened.
There is a moment in every investigation where the story a person has told about themselves stops being the story that the evidence tells. Where the carefully constructed version, the grieving husband, the shocked community member, the man of faith undone by tragedy, collides with something far more stubborn than narrative. Facts do not perform. Facts do not adjust themselves to fit the audience. Facts simply sit there, patient and immovable, waiting for someone to look at them directly. And when investigators looked directly at the facts surrounding Ashley Flynn's death, what they found was not a break-in. What they found was a stage. Let's talk about the door first. Forced entry sounds on the surface like evidence of an outside threat. It sounds like proof that someone came in from the cold, that the danger arrived from beyond the walls of the home, that the family inside was the victim of something random and violent and impossible to predict. That is exactly what it is supposed to sound like. That is exactly what it was designed to make investigators believe. But forced entry can be created. Locks can be manipulated from the inside. Doors can be damaged in ways that mimic intrusion without actually being intrusion. And forensic investigators, people who have spent careers looking at the difference between a scene that happened and a scene that was arranged, know what genuine forced entry looks like. They know its texture, its irregularities, the specific chaos of real violence versus the specific tidiness of manufactured evidence. What they found at the Flynn home did not match the story Caleb told on that 911 call. The scene had been dressed, prepared, arranged to point investigators away from the man who was already inside the house and toward a phantom threat that had never existed. And that changes everything. Because the moment a crime scene is staged, the crime is no longer impulsive. It is no longer a moment of passion that spiraled beyond control. Staging requires time. It requires presence of mind. It requires the ability to stand in a room where something devastating has just occurred and think clearly enough to manage what comes next, to move things, to create things, to construct a version of events and then pick up a phone and perform it convincingly enough to buy yourself time. That is not grief. That is not shock. That is calculation wearing the costume of devastation. And then there were the 11 charges. We have mentioned this number before, but standing here in this chapter with the staging in full view, those 11 charges deserve to be felt differently. Aggravated murder, 3 counts of murder, 2 counts of felonious assault, and then 3 counts of tampering with evidence. 3. Not one careless act in the immediate aftermath of something gone wrong. 3 separate instances significant enough for investigators to charge them individually. 3 moments where Caleb Flynn made a deliberate decision to interfere with the truth, to move it, shape it, bury it, or pressure someone else into burying it for him. And then the witness intimidation counts, 2 of them. Someone knew something. Someone had information that Caleb Flynn needed contained, and rather than trust that the story he had built would hold, he reached out directly deliberately to apply pressure to that person, to remind them in whatever way he chose to do it that their silence had value. Think about the audacity that requires. Think about the specific confidence of a man who, even after his wife's body had been found, even after investigators had arrived and begun asking questions, still believed he could manage the outcome, still believed the performance was working, still believed he was in control of a situation that had already slipped completely beyond his control. 82 hours. That is how long it took, from the 911 call to the handcuffs, less than 4 days. In the timeline of a murder investigation, that is extraordinary. Cases like this, cases with staged scenes and constructed narratives and a suspect embedded inside the victim's own life, these cases can take weeks, months. Sometimes they go cold entirely. This one did not go cold. It moved with the kind of momentum that only happens when the evidence is not scattered or ambiguous or open to interpretation. It moved because investigators looked at the door, and looked at the scene, and looked at the timeline, and looked at the life Caleb Flynn had been living in secret, and every single piece of it pointed in the same direction. He was arrested on February 19th. He stood before a court and entered a plea of not guilty. Bond was set at $3.5 million, a number that reflects not just the severity of the charges, but the assessment of who this man actually was beneath the worship songs and the pastoral robes and the American Idol audition, where he thanked his wife on national television. $3.5 million to stay out of a jail cell, and still, he said not guilty. There is something almost clarifying about that moment, because not guilty is not just a legal plea. In the context of everything the evidence had already revealed, the staged scene, the tampered evidence, the intimidated witness, the secret life running beneath the surface of a marriage and a ministry, not guilty is the last performance. The final act of a man who had spent years believing that the story he told about himself was more powerful than the truth. It was. Ashley Flynn's daughters are growing up without their mother. Her volleyball court is empty of her presence. Her school still carries the shape of the absence she left behind. And Caleb Flynn sits in Miami County Jail while a courtroom prepares to do what the evidence has already done quietly, patiently, and without drama. Tell the truth. The real one, not the one he constructed, not the one he performed, the one that was always there, waiting beneath the surface of a life built on the assumption that no one would ever look closely enough to find it. They looked, and what they found was not a break-in. It never was. We are almost at the end of this story, but the most important part is still ahead. Make sure you are subscribed to The Hidden Verdict so the next episode finds you. Like this video if the evidence has spoken for itself. And comment below, did the 11 charges surprise you, or did you see it coming from the very first chapter? There is no satisfying ending to a story like this. That is the thing that true crime rarely says out loud, that the resolution when it comes does not actually resolve anything, that a verdict is not the same as justice, that justice is not the same as restoration, and that restoration in a case like this one is simply not possible, because what was taken cannot be given back, not by a courtroom, not by a sentence, not by anything. Ashley Flynn is not coming home. And that is the sentence this entire episode has been quietly building toward. Not the charges, not the evidence, not the affair or the staged scene or the 11 counts or the $3.5 million bond. All of that matters. All of that will matter enormously when this case reaches its conclusion in a courtroom in Ohio. But none of it is the point. The point is a 37-year-old woman who went to work every day and poured herself into the lives of young people, and came home and loved her daughters, and had absolutely no idea that the person sleeping beside her had built an entirely different life in the space she could not see. The point is 2 little girls who woke up on February 16, 2026 with a mother, and did not go to sleep that night with one. Let that sit for a moment, really let it sit. After Ashley's death, a GoFundMe was created for her daughters. Strangers, people who had never met Ashley, never watched her coach volleyball, never seen the way she smiled at her students, donated over $166,000. $166,000 from people who simply could not stand the weight of two children being left behind and needed to do something, anything, to push back against it. That number is not a statistic. That number is a community trying to fill a hole it knows cannot be filled. It is the specific human response to a specific human devastation, the impulse to reach toward people in pain even when you cannot reach far enough. It was never going to be far enough. Ashley's family said she brought endless light to the world. Her school said her warmth, her kindness, her smile, these were things that marked the people around her permanently. These are not the words people use because they are expected to. These are the words people reach for when they are trying to explain someone whose presence was genuinely irreplaceable, when the absence of a person changes the texture of the spaces they used to occupy. She changed rooms just by walking into them. And now the rooms are different without her. As of early 2026, Caleb Flynn remains in Miami County Jail awaiting trial. The case has not yet reached its conclusion. The full extent of what happened, who knew what, who said what was planned and what was improvised in those final terrible hours, has not yet been laid out completely in a public courtroom. The other woman's role remains, for now, a question without a fully public answer. The witness intimidation count suggests that somewhere in this story there is a conversation that someone was pressured into keeping quiet. There is a version of events that Caleb Flynn needed contained. Whether that version ever fully surfaces, whether the courtroom gets the whole picture, or only the picture the evidence can prove, remains to be seen. And that unresolved quality is not a failure of this story. It is the truth of it. Because real cases do not wrap up cleanly. Real cases exist in the space between what happened and what can be proven, between what a person did and what the law can hold them accountable for, between what a community lost and what a sentence can acknowledge. Justice, when it comes, will be partial. It will be necessary and it will be meaningful and it will matter enormously to the people who loved Ashley Flynn. But it will be partial. Because the full weight of what was taken, the Tuesday evenings, the graduations, the ordinary moments that accumulate into a life, cannot be entered into evidence, cannot be quantified, cannot be sentenced away. So we return one final time to the question this episode began with. Was this a man driven to desperation by desire, a man who loved someone and convinced himself that the only way forward was to remove the obstacle standing between him and that life? Or was it something colder than that, something more deliberate, something that had two architects instead of one, assembled quietly in private spaces over time, until February 16th became not an explosion but an execution? We do not know the full answer yet. But we know this. Ashley Flynn was not an obstacle. She was not a problem to be solved or a life to be discarded because someone else had made promises they were never intending to keep. She was a person, full and warm and present and irreplaceable, a coach, a teacher, a mother, a woman who believed she was building a life with someone who was building something else entirely behind her back. She deserved better than what she got. Her daughters deserve better than what they were left with. And whatever a courtroom in Ohio eventually decides, whatever verdict comes, whatever sentence follows, the truest measure of this story is not what happens to Caleb Flynn. It is what Ashley Flynn's daughters carry forward, what her students remember, what her colleagues feel every time they walk past an empty space that used to be filled with a smile that apparently changed the feeling of an entire room. That is the verdict that matters most. And no courtroom gets to hand that one down. If this story stayed with you, and we believe it will, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to The Hidden Verdict for more stories told the way they deserve to be told. Drop your final verdict in the comments below. We read every single one. And if there is someone in your life you think needs to see this, send it to them. Because Ashley Flynn's story deserves to be heard, and the people who loved her deserve to know that the world has not forgotten her. This has been The Hidden Verdict.